What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another ranking your builds from 1 to 10. And today, oh, we shouldn't see this. This shouldn't be there. I was messing with my camera. Today, we're doing part 2. So we got 3 more builds that we want to cook up or talk about. And we got some interesting builds. We have one from Cosmos, which we're starting off. We're going to go to Bardy, another, I think he's GM at this point, or he's a GM gamer at the end of the day. And then we have my build that I did during a tournament that I didn't necessarily like. But let's get into this. But before we get into it, actually, if you'd like to send me your builds, then you can message me on Discord. My Discord description, or the Discord is in the description down below. To join it, and then you can send me a message. Some of you may be discouraged from doing it because you don't want to get cooked, but it's more of like a learning thing. If you guys don't know like specifically what you want to build here, you're like, oh, there's so many items, I don't know what to build in this situation, let me just build this item. And then like you look at it afterwards and you're like, I don't really know if I like this, I want to get a second opinion. Then you can always send it to us, and I believe that we're knowledgeable enough on the subject to help you out through that. And so yeah, don't feel discouraged if you'd like to send it to us. If not, that's okay too. But we're just gonna pick some gamers, and today we have some really good gamers. So I'm assuming there's gonna be some really high scores here, or at least we hope. Maybe they're just so good at this game that you can build like shit and just fucking run the game anyways. But as always, we have Dr. or Lord Dr. Professor Mr. Michael here as well.
Hello.
And then I think that's it. Enough chit chat. Let's get into this. I got the face cam for this one. And yeah, so we have Cosmos. Briefly looked over this. As you can see, I mean, if you know the Joust community, you know Caddy, Fab Duel, Yash, obviously, Infamous Jesse, a dual GM, Jacked Cock Jock. I'm not entirely sure who that is, but he's GM. Obviously a legend. And then obviously Cosmos. So he's on the Osiris today. And yeah, from the looks of it, this is his build. So he likes to do this thing where he buys tier 1 of an item and then goes into Warrior's Axe, but he built this first basically. So he basically went Warrior's Axe, Glad Shield, Envenom Xe, Oni's, Mantle of Discord. And reason why I picked this build is I'm trying to pick builds that have like a full build, because why would we analyze something that only has like 3 items in? But this is obviously a Kins. So this is his build. I think generally speaking, this is a really good cookie cutter build. This is actually one of the builds I like to. So with Osiris, you can build so many of the shields. Like you can build Phalanx, Glad, and Berserkers. And specifically in Conquest, going Glad Berserkers is really good, or Phalanx Berserkers. But in Joust, the odds of you getting like that extra, you know, physical protection just isn't as beneficial, because they only have an honor. You really only need 1 physical defense item, in my opinion, so it's not as good. But with Osiris, like I said, you could go Berserkers, Phalanx, you could go Shoguns, Onis, so either or is really good. But in my opinion, what I like to do is the Glad Shield Onis and then go into Sundering, just because of the amount of damage you do with this 2-in-1 combo. I mean, you just poke them from afar. You have so many protections for your Sundering Axe once you get there, of course, or even just your Warrior's Axe in general. You just do so much, and then you can get your attack speed from Envenom Xe, and then you can go into your Kins later, obviously. And then obviously, you know, your Mantle of Discord. You either go Mantle of Discord, Pridwin, or Spirit Robe. That's how I build it. And so, I mean, the order I think is a little weird to me, but they're GMs, so like they can do what the hell they want. They have, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is a pretty. Like this is if you ever are playing Osiris, you can never go wrong in almost any circumstances. Just going this is pretty much an all-around build. He's got the axe for obviously because you're getting a bunch of health and damage from that. Osiris is one of those gods where like you get a lot of benefit out of your 1-2 and you do a lot of damage with just your base abilities, but then obviously he's got his auto attack chain as well. That's why you can kind of build him a little bit of hybrid of both. I see a lot of people, usually people like to do Glad Shield Shoguns, or they'll do a Berserker Shoguns, or some sort of a mix of that. It's very good that they were probably trio queuing, they probably discussed this, that the Charon went Shoguns.
100%.
Yep, because usually a lot of times, like, it's like the Osiris be going Glad Shield into Shoguns instead of that Onis for that extra mitigation. So it's actually good that the Charon went Shogun, so that way it frees up an item slot for Osiris to go something that's a little bit more better for himself. Rather than just trying to get the Shoguns out of necessity. He's already got it from the passive from Charon. And then obviously the Xe, it just works so well with Osiris because it gives him the extra attack speed, gives himself some shred, and it also helps out his Hou Yi as well. And it makes it to where it frees up an item slot for Hou Yi as well, because if you notice, he's not going the Xe. So it frees up an item slot for Hou Yi as well to optimize his build. He actually went a little bit more into crit as well, so then that way Osiris is probably running up into their face, auring them a few times, chunking them down a bit, and then Hou Yi's coming up from behind, and he's just able to chunk them with their protections already low. And then another thing too, that Mantle of Discord, I would usually probably go Spirit Robe, but I can actually probably switch over now to Mantle of Discord just because the philosophy of him being hybrid and kind of running into their face essentially. If he ever gets low and he's on top of somebody, he's just going to be able to stun people that he's trying to hit.
Specifically with E-Shell, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then last item, Kins, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always, the philosophy that I have between either Spirit Robe or Mantle of Discord, although Spirit Robe would definitely be super good here as well because of the mitigations you get when you do get CC'd, and they do have a lot of CC. I do like the chase down ability with it because, I mean, E-Shell, she doesn't have a getaway, so she can just like...
A lot of people will pick up Mantle as like almost like a defensive thing. Like if somebody's running up on me and they're trying to kill me and they're getting me low, it'll stun them and make it to where I can run away. But you can, in this instance, he's using it offensively, I'm assuming. Yeah. To where he's obviously running in their face, trying to auto them down, try to stun them with the three. If they try to kill him or bring him down, then anybody staring near him is just be stunned, and then that's just essentially an ability, a stun ability, and an item for the rest of his team to capitalize on. Yeah,
I'm glad you picked up on the Xe, the Shoguns, which also allowed Hou Yi just to build even more crit. And Spectral Armor, it's one of those items you kind of need to go, but it's not a good item, and it always feels bad to build it. So I think currently in Smite, I think crit is just always going to be a good build. May not be like the top tier best build, but in this specific instance, I think, yeah, them trio queuing this is perfect. And obviously, in the Void Shield as well. So whenever Charon gets close, he makes the Osiris and the Hou Yi do 10% more damage. Or I'm sorry, reduces their protections by 10%, which allows them to do more damage.
I also like how the Charon is building essentially, because a lot of times people are afraid to kind of build for their team. They was like, oh, the Shoguns is good for my Osiris and Hou Yi. That's a no-brainer right there. A lot of people won't even do that though, because it's like, oh, I'm Charon, I don't really benefit from Shoguns, but the rest of your team does. And then the Void Stone, it's the same idea. It's like, oh, well, this isn't going to help me. I'm a magical character, but I have two physical characters right beside me, so that's going to help them out as well. Yeah. Your Charon build is really good for playing a true support.
Yeah. The only thing that and this is just personal, like generally speaking, Cosmos's build is 10 out of 10. Every item in there is perfect, specifically against their team comp as well. The only thing that this is from me personally, I wouldn't build the Xe at this point.
The order as well,
I would have changed the order, and it would literally just be I would go Onis first because they do have two magical gods. I know why he built Glad Shield, because early game Honor is just going to do more damage than E-Shell or Atlas, for example. Right. And so he doesn't have to worry about that. But for me, and generally speaking for you guys, because this is a GM game, this isn't going to apply to like any of you, basically.
Higher skill players can kind of deal with not really having that much mana. They can play around not having a lot of MP5, but just to feel good in general, and also for newer players as well that usually just kind of throw out their abilities and they end up not having any mana.
Yeah.
Probably go the Onis first right after the Axe. Not only because they have double magical, but also because you get that MP5 on earlier. Again, though, they can kind of play around it, and then higher skill players can kind of play around not having MP5 by conserving their abilities and only using them when they actually need to.
Yeah.
But generally, as a feel good, and it definitely works in this scenario since it covers two of their players in the enemy team. The Onis would probably be, in my opinion, I'd probably go Onis immediately after Axe, and then probably you can either go either Xe into Glad or Glad into Xe. It's really your choice for the most part. And then Manticores and
Kins
pretty much stay in the same spot.
Yeah, for me, my go-to build would be Axe, Onis, then Glad Shield, Xe, Mantle, and Kins. So on a scale of 1 through 10, for me, for personally myself, like I said earlier, I think this build is like 10 out of 10 for like what they're doing at their GM level. For me, I would put this at, I'd give this a 9.5. And the 0.5 is only because personally me, I wouldn't go in this order. But that's what I would give it. What would you give this out of 10?
I was actually thinking the exact same thing, a 9.5.
Oh, good. Why, that's very good. Yes, I like that.
And for those exact same reasons too. I think it's a 10 out of 10 build with all those items in there is perfect. It's just the way in which I would rearrange them. It's the same way I kind of want that tankiness and an MP5 a bit earlier before you get into that XE. So I would just switch around the order like a tiny bit. But other than that, it's pretty much a 10 out of 10. But just for that small little tweak, probably a 9.5.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, all the items are perfect. So I've decided this right now on the whim. For builds that are basically a 10 out of 10, I don't really see a point in going into the game and just doing it. So
you can just see it.
You can just see this build. You can go this exact way as Cosmos is, or you can do what we said. Either way, all the items here are perfect, especially against this team comp. But one of the bigger things that I want to point out is just an extra item you want to pay attention to is Spirit Robe. I think Spirit Robe, generally speaking, is probably going to be better for you than Mantle. It just really depends on your team comp as well. Because again, if you don't know, Osiris can overcap the mitigations because he has innate mitigations. So he can get basically cap mitigations based on his build with Oni Hunters and Spirit Robe, for example, and still get over the mitigation cap because of his innate mitigation. But other than that, I mean, just copy this build in a different order as well. You can also go Berserkers, Shoguns too, if you know your Charon or your Guardian isn't as well. But yeah, that's basically it. Cosmos's build 9.5. Not really surprising there, but let's go on to the next build. All right, and then we have our boy Bardy. He's trio queuing. I'm pretty sure this is Trelly. I think he puts his account on what is it called, private. And then this is the boy Dave going up against some other gamers here. Pretty solid gamers, 2800 and more. So I don't know what these boys are, but they're Masters players. So but they're not Dave, Trelly, and Bardy. So we're looking at his Achilles. I do know that a lot of people like playing Achilles if he's open. It's like one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm gonna pick Achilles if he's not open, or if he's open, they don't ban him. And so I decided that we could look at an Achilles build. There's a lot of other builds we were looking at where we're like, oh, we could do that one, but I think Achilles is probably a better one to look at, just because of how OP he is, and you know, it's always good to see an Achilles build. So he's trio queuing with them, so keep in mind, you know, they're having communication. But let's see. So he built into a Sundering Axe, Blackthorn, Glad Shield, into an Arc Druids, Talisman of Energy, which is a very unique item, and then Pridwin. I think this build is good. Like, objectively, this is a good build. I've been telling you guys, at least on my meta builds update, I love Blackthorn Hammer. I've been loving it a little bit less. Even though I got a buff, I still think it's really, really good. I just like this item more. I'm in your Assassins. So if you're like Camazotz, even a Nejad technically, although Nejad has other builds I like more. But primarily those gods from those assassin gods like Camazotz. I can't think of any other assassins that are really. I mean, Thor would be another one that'd be really good with Blackthorn Hammer. I mean, just because it gives you so much power, health, mana. It's basically a pseudo tank item that gives you power, and then obviously it's passive, giving you cooldown or MP5. So you never run out of MP5. That being said, I don't think it's as good as it is on your warriors, especially with how OP warriors are right now. I think specifically because you have a guardian here that's going to go your Gauntlet of Thebes, that you can kind of skip that item, not, you know, doubling up on it, because the warrior items are really solid right now, and I think you can get your power spike really early on. Meanwhile, your guardian's still, you know, peeling, having all the setup, and you know, the Gauntlet of Thebes that you would normally build here. It gives you a lot more pressure because we're in a double tank comp. So honestly, I think it's a solid item. I don't think I'd build it here. Glad Shield obviously is, I mean, it's Achilles, so you obviously almost always want to build Glad Shield. Arc Druids, I've been talked about this item too. With when you're Achilles, you want to auto cancel with your 3. You 3 in.
You want to be auto canceling all the time with your 3 and your 1.
Yeah, so you
leaving in the archer damage, which is really good on him.
It's basically like a Hydra's or like a polyproc, but because you can cancel your 3, you 3 in, cancel it, auto, use your 3 back. So, it's cookie cutter, obvious stuff that makes an Achilles player a lot better than or a regular Achilles player different from like a really high skilled Achilles, in my opinion. So I think Arc Druids weaving them in makes them do even more fucking damage, which is absurd. Talisman I don't really like here, and the only reason why I don't like it is because I think Oni's is better, but they were cooking up something spicy with this one. So
they got the Fafnir, obviously giving Hunter probably the best guard in the game, or Hunters in general, just giving them attack speed, plus he built Shoguns. And then Hachi's got his attack speed too, and then he's also building Silver Branch in conjunction with the Achilles, optimizing the build with Talisman of Energy. So that Hachi is getting a shit ton of attacks for capping. So they were cooking up a special build here. In this instance, so normally I'm not the biggest fan of Talisman of Energy, but in this instance with this team comp and what they were going for, it's actually
kind of busted.
It's actually kind of busted. It's actually kind of good. So normally I'd probably switch that out for either an Oni's or a Genji's if you want more cooldown. Generally I usually go Oni's more often. But in this instance, for what they're going for, Talisman's actually a good play there. I think it's a little too late in the build though, if I'm going to be honest. And also I'm not the biggest fan of the Pridwin either. It's good, don't get me wrong, if you want more cooldown, but I'd probably prefer going either a Spirit Robe or even a Mantle as well. Probably Spirit Robe there. And then also changing up the order a bit as well. Blackthorn Hammer as well it's good, gives you plenty of power. That Blackthorn Hammer and Glad Shield combo early game is going to give you a shit ton of damage and also plenty of tank stats. But I think that, especially since if you look down, they have double tank, then the Morgan Le Fay is also building defense as well. I think that I usually always have a staple, like usually you have a cookie cutter Achilles build, and one of the items that's usually always in there, like usually last item, is a Heartseeker, and I think it would be really good against that team comp, especially with the Morgan Le Fay going defense, but also because they have the double tank as well. So yeah, trying to kind of free that up. I don't think you really need the Blackthorn. It's still a good item there though. And also trying to change up the order a bit, I'd probably go straight from Axe into that Glad Shield. And then maybe that Talisman, and then after that probably get the Spirit Robe and then Arc Druids and then last Heartseeker. That's what I would probably personally do. This build though, inherently, because you get 30%, you get max cooldown essentially, you get plenty of HP, you're helping out your team with the Talisman, you're getting a lot of damage. It's a good build. It's just not what I would personally do. Everything works though.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
The one thing that I don't like the Talisman, because I don't like the Talisman here, and that's just because it still works though, because I mean at this point he doesn't have Silver Branch yet, so you can still, you'll be able to get the stacks once you build Silver Branch, so it's like as if you've never happened before. But like I still think Talisman, you can still give that attack speed. It gives MP5 and movement speed early in the game.
I would say
cheap,
that
right?
It's fairly cheap too. It's beneficial throughout the entire game, but I think you actually get the most bang for your buck early game, if anything.
Yeah.
So, and I think the reason why he had to build it so late is because he had that Blackthorn Hammer for that early damage and sustain health HP. Again, not a bad item by any means, but it just affects the way the general outlook of the build goes because you're building Talisman so late.
Yeah.
If you took that away and replaced it with, say, the Heartseeker last item, you kind of push everything down to the left a little bit. That way you're building Glad, Talisman, and your other items, Arc Druids, a little bit quicker as well.
Yeah, so for me, basically his build was basically mine, just, Glad into Talisman into Arc Druids, Spirit Robe, and then Heartseeker. That's his build. My build, I like that build more than this build. Specifically for me, I like the Prid one a little bit better. That's just me, and it's
gonna shit on it too much though. Like Prid one's still a good option if you want that more cooldown. Obviously, you can go
Reverent or Glorious.
Reverent, I don't really think you'd go Glorious there because it's a little wonky with how you'd be able to get it down. Because pretty sure it starts as soon as you start casting it, which you're not gonna be right on top of somebody. I hope you're not right on top of somebody unless like really trying to goon somebody.
Goon somebody. Yeah.
But
Gooning on them.
Reverend can be good to get that extra shield stack, especially so you're trying to chase people down and you're in the middle of a fight. I personally would just like the mitigation stacks though from Spirit Robe.
Yeah, I get that.
That's just me though, and I think I'm okay with only 20% cooldown. So
yeah, that's basically the build. We'll go on the build here in a second because I think Achilles deserves it. But before we get into that, what would you rate this from a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, so it's definitely a good build. Like nothing. You get plenty of good early damage. Blackthorn actually does work on Achilles. It's just not what I would personally go for this team comp, but I can see why I would go that. It's definitely not terrible. I wouldn't get mad if you built that there. Talisman's good for this team comp as well, especially with what we're doing. Pridwin, I personally wouldn't go it, but I can see why you would. It'd probably be my second choice after Spirit Robe. And then I'd probably shift around some of the items a little bit. But for the most part, I'd probably give this an 8 out of 10 then.
8 out of 10. Yeah. I'd agree with you 100%. Yeah. Basically what you said. For me, though, I'd get it at 8.5.
Good.
Just because of the Pridwin, I think. But yeah, 8.5. Bardy, step up your game, brother. No, kidding. But no, yeah, this is a really good build. It's a pretty solid build. And it works specifically just because they're... Like, normally speaking, I wouldn't say, like, as a cookie cutter... all builds you want to build Talisman, but for what they were doing in this specific context, which this video is trying to showcase, it's really good. So but yeah, we're gonna go ahead really quickly and go into the build for Achilles. We're gonna probably go over our build and then go over a couple honorable mentions for it, but we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. We're gonna do 2 builds here fairly quickly. So with his build, I actually, and it's probably going to cut here at the camera because my FPS is dog shit. So don't look at the camera. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hide the camera so it's not as distracting. Hold on. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Anyways. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're just going to go over his build first. I like the Sundering Axe here. This is the way that I would build it. We'd go into... I'm blanking on the item. It's the talisman. Yeah, talisman. Talisman energy here because they had 2 magicals. They had a Morgan and I can't remember the other guy, but it was a Sobek. And I think that's just better overall because you have 2 damage source from magical rather than 1 from physical. Then I go into Glad Shield. And after this, so personally, we'll just put 3 items here, but we got Pridwin. Either Mantle or Spirit Robe, which you liked more. Which if I had to pick between that, I would, outside of Pridwin, that's just my preference, I would go Spirit Robe. But out of the 3 of these items, we can just do Spirit Robe. For that, and then obviously Arc Druids.
Arc Druids, and then finally Heartseeker.
And then finally Heartseeker. Again, the reason why we go this is just because of the Talisman. But yeah, this is the order I would go in specifically for his. So if you'd like to screenshot that, I suppose, then you can do that as well. But we're gonna go ahead and clear this right now. This is the cookie cutter build that I still like. Sundering Axe into Glad Shield. Specifically, if you're gonna go Achilles as the main tank, then I think you should go Prophetic Cloak or Gauntlet. Actually, yeah. This is a proxy for Prophetic and Gauntlet. I think Prophetic is more easily stacked on Achilles.
Essentially, you go Prophetic right after Axe if you're the sole tank, essentially, or if you just want to be tankier in general. But generally, if you have another tank, it's better to rush the Glad and Onis. Yeah.
And then I'd go Onis here. You interchange these depending on which team comp you're going up against. I'm blanking here. I think it's we go Spirit Robe. No, we go Spirit Robes.
Spirit Robe.
Spirit Robe / Mantle here. This is the same thing. You can also go Pridwin as well. Personally, that would be me, but Spirit Robe's obviously really good. And then
Arc Druids, Heartseekers.
Arc Druids, Heartseekers. So it's very similar to his actually, just a little bit of change.
It's mostly like basically just replacing the Talisman with Onis and putting it a bit earlier, and then replacing the Blackthorn with Heartseeker.
Yep.
Just getting rid of the Blackthorn, pushing everything to the left, and then replacing that damage item with your last item.
Yep, and then obviously Prophetic if you wanted to be solo tank. But that is your Achilles build, your cookie cutter, and then your other one that we were basing off Bardy's. So we'll go on to the last build, which happens to be mine. So we'll be right back. All right, and then we have my build. So some of you may know this game. This was a we did a scrim where it was basically a captains of people, me, Hefe, Night Canter, and CC Big Bird as masters players, and then followed by some other people in the Discord. Trying to make it as even as possible. This was the first game that we had for the finals, and I played the Camazotz, and I wanted to specifically go over this build because I don't like the build that I went. So even me giving advice about certain builds, a lot of it can be hard, especially when you're like in the moment and you have to think about so many things. I mean, I was having to give Nami or Evolution TN. He was asking me what builds he needed to go, so I'm telling him builds. And then I'm having to think about my build. I'm like, I don't know what I should go here. And then it wasn't until afterwards I look at my build. I'm like, oh, I don't know why I didn't do this, that, and the other thing. So we can just go into this. So they have a Cuckoo, a Shiva, and a Horus. Shiva heals, Horus heals, a lot. So I needed to fit a beat stick somewhere in here. So I went Bluestone, Gauntlet, Jotuns, Hydra, Serrated, which is pretty cookie cutter as him. Usually you want to go Axe here, which is one of the big things I wanted to. So I went Bluestone just because I wanted the NP5 and a little bit more damage. But the NP5, it turned out, was not enough. So it wasn't until Hydra's that I actually wasn't running out of mana. And I should have been picking up the blue buff more often. I don't know if I was. I can't remember. Either way, I was running out of mana so often. I like going Gauntlet on him because it makes, or a lot of Assassins, because it makes them tankier, give them health, prots. It's just really good item for them. But because they were healing so much, I had to put in a beat stick and I didn't. And because I had to put a beat stick in here, I have to get rid of some of these items. And if you'll see, Shiva, Horse, and Cuckoo had defense. He has defense from alternate, breastplate. Shiva has defense, Horus has defense. So I need percent pen, and I have 30% pen here, but with no beat stick, it doesn't really help because I'm not, not able to heal. Yeah. So there's a couple things that I could have done and went instead. This is specifically what I was gonna try to do. I think one of the biggest things one of the items that I really like on Assassins is Runeforge Hammer. I'm sorry, Blackthorn Hammer. Mm-hmm. I like Blackthorn Hammer a lot because it just gives you almost everything you want at early game, at least. Gives you decent amount of power, health, mana, and then its passive either gives you cooldown or MP5, which is always good to have in the beginning of the game. So you never run out of mana. So I wanted to go that there. That makes the build tricky though, because I was gonna go like maybe Gauntlet here, and then I'd have to go into Beat Stick, but I don't have a lot of cooldown, so I'd have to go Hydras. And there's so many things that fuck with that build. The one glaring flaw that I'd always change in every single build is the Bluestone going into Warrior's Axe. But Mike has a different build that I actually like a lot more. And you can go over it actually.
Right, so what you were talking about, the biggest issues with this is obviously the anti-heal. But then when you switch out Jotuns for Brawlers, you're missing out on that 20% cooldown. Then you're kind of fishing for any cooldown you need in the build. Then obviously Bluestone, you need to change it to Axe. So I think the build that you were going to go for Axe into Blackthorn Hammer, Thebes, and then everything, and then probably Brawlers, Hydras, Serrated.
Yeah,
Serrated. And then by the end of that, you'll have 20% cooldown. Now, I think you were also saying that you wanted to sell Blackthorn late game to get the extra 40% pen
for Heartseeker, which right, I could have done, or I couldn't. You could keep it for 20%. Right. Either way, it's still there's better build.
Yeah. So that's one option. That's like you're hyper late game and you're selling a full Blackthorn Hammer for Heartseeker. It's not the most optimal thing. I have two build suggestions. One of them very much mimics how you did it right here, because Thieves is very good for tanking both the physical and obviously that Cuckoo.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to keep this the same way, but you get the anti-heal as well, you'd obviously, all these builds you're changing Bluestone to Axe just because Axe is just better in this situation. If you wanted to mitigate the MP5 issues until you finally get your Hydras online, you can go into a tier 1 earring, which only costs 400, and then instead of selling a full Blackthorn Hammer late game, you could just be selling a small little earring. That way you
Yeah.
can. It's basically the same build as the Blackthorn by the end of the game. It's just a bit more optimized to where you don't have to spend a whole entire item and then sell an entire item at the late game. So it'd be Axe, then Tier 1 Earring into Thebes, then into Brawlers, Hydras, Serrated, and then Heartseeker at the end when you sell the thing. Now with that build, you've got pretty good tank stats from Thieves from both sides. You got 40% penetration from Heartseeker, Hydras, and Serrated. The only issue is you're only going to have 10% cooldown.
Yeah.
Which is not the best, especially when you're trying to assassinate the Cuckoo in the backline.
Yeah.
So the build that I crafted up essentially makes it where you have a lot more cooldown. You're still fairly tanky. It kind of gives you a pseudo gauntlet feel. It's the only caveat though is that you're going to be a lot squishier to the Cuckoo. So the build that I was thinking of here to mitigate the MP5 issues is you go Axe straight into a Breastplate of Valor, so replacing Thieves with Breastplate. That'll give you everything you pretty much need. It gives you 15 MP5, 300 mana. It gives you the physical prot stats you need for Shiva and Horus. And then you are going to be fairly squishy to the Cuckoo because now you don't have Thieves stacks for magical defense. You mostly are just tanking him via your Axe defense, and then but then you could also upgrade the glyph for Breastplate of Valor, so you can kind of get the passive
determination.
Determination to where you'll get around 20 magical protections whenever you get hit, up to I believe 40 when it's fully stacked up. So it's like a pseudo Thieves for that can actually work. But then, so that will fix the MP5 issues. You're physically tanky towards physicals and a little bit towards Cuckoo if you get the determination stacked up. And then from there, you can go into the Brawlers for the anti-heal, then the Hydras, then the Serrated, and then the Heartseeker. Now, that build pretty much stays the same. The only thing that I would also add to is that last item. I also brought up that you can also go Erendite as well. And the reason why I like that specifically for this team comp and why I brought it up because Cuckoo is so annoying to actually to assassinate because he can just use his 2 over and over again and run away. Erendite, obviously, Kama, whenever you use your ult, you're basically using that to try to assassinate somebody or do a lot of damage. Say if you don't get that off on the Cuckoo, you don't actually manage to kill him and he's just going to slipstream away. That Erendite will make it to where you have 30% more movement speed. That way you might actually have a chance of finishing the kill at the very end. You might be able to chase down the Cuckoo. So the stats you're looking at, depending on which one you go, is if you go Heartseeker, you're going to have 30% cooldown in the build with max penetration, so 40% pen, or if you decide to go Erendite for the more utility, trying to finish off the kill in that specific scenario, you'd be dropping down the pen to 30% from just Hydras and Serrated, and you'd instead be getting max cooldown alongside that passive as well.
Yeah, either or work. Yeah, that definitely is a better build that I like more that we when I think about it. I think the Blackthorn hammer build is better only if you can get your Jotuns. If you ever have anti-heal and against the enemy, it kind of fucks with your build, especially if they're going well, I guess it really depends, because you could technically go Brawlers and Jotuns if they had a double backline,
right?
But because we're in a meta with double tank, it kind of really fucks everything.
Yeah,
so
you can't really do double flat.
You can't really do double flat unless you're strictly trying to kill the backline, and
then especially for this, that flat pen isn't really needed for Cuckoo anyway because he's going.
Yeah, because he's so tanky. He's so damn tanky.
Why the main flat pen item being Brawlers isn't even really for that flat pen in the first place. It's because
just the passive.
It's because of the healing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll showcase the build here in a second. But let's rate my stinky build. What would you give this on a scale of 1 to 10?
So I mean, this is a fairly cookie cutter build in most scenarios for the most part. If I wasn't really thinking too hard when I first got into here, and I remember you mentioned before you were also helping Evolution out as well. I probably would have just altered to do something similar to this. I probably would have went the Gauntlet build as well. I wouldn't have gone Bluestone. I definitely would have gone Axe into Gauntlet. I probably would have ended up going the earring route just to help the MP5 issues because I just like doing that in these types of assassin builds just because the MP5 can be really nasty. Of course, I kind of like the breastplate build better, but in this situation I probably would have ended up going the gauntlet build just because that's what I'm used to going.
Yeah.
So in this instance, nothing's like inherently wrong with the build. You have the penetration, you've got the thieves, you've got everything you really need to be an assassin and to be fairly tanky. The only issues would be the cooldown and the MP5 issues, alongside the bluestone obviously always being changed to axe in this situation as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's an overall decent build. I think it definitely can be optimized better based off like the changes we made before.
Yeah.
I'd give it a solid 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay. Yeah. I was really upset about this build because after we finished the game and I'm like, oh, why didn't I pick up a beat stick? Jesus. And then I thought I was thinking about more of the build. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? But no, I just went the cookie cutter route. In a normal game, like if I saw someone build like this, I'd be like, yeah, if they didn't have any healing, if they had no healing this game, I honestly think this build fucks, except I still would have went, yeah, I don't know why I went bluestone. So
it's one of those things that you definitely need brawlers for the anti-heal, but then now you're having issues with MP5 and also issues with the cooldown, so it just kind of messes things up.
For this context and for me, I'd probably give myself a 5.
Overrated as fuck, in my opinion. I mean, it's all right, like,
because that's not objective. I have a bias for myself. I think at least I do. I think that the build is fine. It's just for what I could have done better, and it's pretty obvious for me. I deduct a point because I should be better. But yeah, I'd probably give myself a 5. But yeah, what I said earlier. I don't want to reiterate what I said, but I give myself a 5. He gives me a 6. I'll take it on the chin. I know I fucked up. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get into the build section. All right, now we're at the Camazot's build. So we're going to go ahead and go over the build that he gave for this specific context, in which I think this build is 100% better. And then we'll go over the cookie cutter build for you that don't remember the build, I suppose.
The brawlers beat stick, so you have that flat pen and also anti-heal against their entire team. At this point, you've got pretty good MP5, you got good poke from the brawlers and warriors axe. You got plenty of cooldown as well from breastplate. From there, you go into Hydra's Lament. At this point, you're gonna have 30% cooldown, and you're not gonna really have any mana issues anymore.
0
as
mana
well.
issues, yeah.
With that breastplate, you're not gonna be like completely scot-free. With MP5, it's only 15, but it's good enough to be able to get you through for the most part.
Yeah.
And you have 300 mana as well, so good enough to play around with. Once you have Hydras, though, you're good. After that, you can go into a Serrated Edge for that movement speed, lifesteal, and then obviously the 20% pen, which is the most important part. For that double tank, well, actually triple tank, because you got the Cuckoo built-in tank as well.
Yeah.
And then finally, it's either going to be, depending on what your style is, you can either go for a Heartseeker or an Erendite there. Erendite power gives you cooldown, so you get a max cooldown in the build, but then also makes it to where if you fail to finish off, say, the Cuckoo, if you're trying to assassinate them at the very end with your ultimate, you can be able to catch up with them via the movement speed buff and the power buff as well if you're trying to slipstream away. But if you want to have more pen and you don't care about having that passive or the max cooldown, you can opt for a Heartseeker instead.
Yeah. And personally, for me, I like the Heartseeker more. But yeah, like you said, Erendite, it's a trade-off for both of these, honestly.
Right. I like both of them. It's kind of 50-50. For this scenario, I would personally go the Erendite just for that Cuckoo. Just to be able to secure the kill on him.
And then obviously you go into your Sundering. Serrated, and then Erendite or Heartseeker. That would be your build. I like this build a lot better. It covers almost all bases. You have your cooldown, you have all the percent pen you need. And then if you want even more percent pen, you can go in here for trade off for 10% cooldown, you know. So you have a lot of options here instead of what I was going to do, which was going to, fuck over. This build is way more optimized. Yeah, and so this is the build for that specific context. And actually, this build really works for almost any type of context that has some type of you need some type of anti-heal. The only thing you'd probably change is your tank. So like, if you were gonna go up against, like, let's say they had a guardian mage and a warrior or something, you would like change this out for like maybe a Genji's or something. and then if they have double backline. So you would. There's a lot of options for this part, but exactly. So, but yeah, this is specifically. It was a tough one for me too. So, but yeah, that's this build. I like this build a lot. And then for just a cookie cutter build, we'll just go zip through this. Sundering Axe. Obviously, you would go regular axe first. Gauntlet of Thieves. This is the build I was gonna go, or I was actually going into. Jotuns. Actually, I'd probably go into, for him, probably Jotun's bigger. I like that better for him. It's just a better glyph, I think, in my opinion. Heartseeker. No, not Heartseeker. Hydras. I always get those items mixed up. You go into Hydras, serrated, and then you go into this would be your Heartseeker. This would cap out your max percent bend, and then obviously you have your bead stick here. But at that point, it kind of just goes into the other build that we were just talking about. Another item that I did forget about is I actually like this item a lot for assassins. Is why can't I think of the not Runeforge, Blackthorn. Blackthorn Hammer I've actually been liking a lot. I got a buff too, so a lot of the times you'll see me, specifically in games if I ever play Kama. It's a more greedy build. I would go into Blackthorn, the Gauntlet, into Jotuns, Hydras, and then I'd either go Serrated, and then or Heartseeker, and then I would sell my Blackthorn for a Heartseeker. This build specifically goes hard. If, like I said, there was no anti-heal, and that's kind of what I was trying to do, but I didn't realize like halfway through my build, I'm like, oh shit, I need anti-heal, and I don't have it. Because at this point, it's basically the same build as before. It's just that you have that early Blackthorn Hammer, which can give you a lot of pressure, so that's an option. But that's basically it. I'm actually gonna switch over here in a second so you can see my mug. Here, I'll be right back. Oh, all right, there's my face. All right, so that was your 3 builds. We got Bardy, Cosmos, and me. Hopefully that did help you a little bit at least, or at least found it a little bit entertaining. I don't know if we're gonna obviously do more of these. I'm trying to make it to where we could like cut it a little bit shorter, because I know some of you guys just want to either just see the 1 through 10, or you just want a little bit less explanation. I've seen a couple people say, like, can you please explain something to me? And then they'll be like, but don't explain too far in depth. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, we're probably just gonna have to meet somewhere in the middle, but hopefully the people who do watch these videos, that you did find some, at least entertainment, and it did help you out. At least we're trying to figure out at least what way to think of when doing or picking a build against another team. I think we're gonna probably do these weekly, or at least try to, because I do, not only is this helpful for you guys, but in my opinion, I think it's pretty fun to just like go throughout the builds and like try to theory craft builds. That's always been one of my main things that I like, and specifically with Mike too. So but yeah, join the Discord if you want to send me some pictures. Join the Discord, PM me, or send it in some other form. I don't know how you would do that, but if you find a way to do that, sure. But yeah, that's basically everything. If you have any suggestions, you have any feedback, let me know in the comment section down below. Comment, like, and subscribe if you did like this video. But with that being said, I think that's everything that we have. So thank you guys for watching.